All right. Well, I think we've got a quorum. We can go ahead and get started, guys. We will probably have a bunch more folks rolling in the first few minutes of the call. But what we don't want to waste any more time at the front of the hour. We want to go ahead and dive in. So if you guys don't already know me, my name is Peter. I'm with the Startup CPG team. Today we've got Dash and Jamie from Inmar with us, and they're going to be talking about kind of an intro to deductions management, and touch on a few ways that Inmar has developed to help manage that. So without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and kick it over to them to introduce themselves and dive into the presentation that they've got today. Thanks, guys.
All right, good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for joining us today. We're excited to talk to you about deductions management and ways that we can help with automation for this process. My name is Jamie Marion. I'm the solutions expert for FinTech solutions at Inmar, and joining me today is Dash Bibudada. He's the VP and General Manager for Deductions Link at Inmar.
Hi everyone, excited to be here. We look forward for this to be a conversation, and it's a right size group. We're excited to bring in our insights and knowledge for this conversation.
Yeah, and just to add on to what Dash said, we encourage everyone to use the Q&A functionality in Zoom to send questions throughout the presentation. We will have some time at the end, but if any come up, please share those in the Q&A functionality. So just a quick administrative note before we get started. Here's our antitrust and disclaimer notice. Just to paraphrase, we're presenting this just for education and informational purposes only. There's no legal advice or opinions here. So before we jump in to talk about deductions, we want to take a minute to talk about kind of, the last couple of years and what we've had going on and how it's affecting today's environment for businesses. So first of all, let's talk about inflation. This is huge for everyone right now. I actually just watched a video on our local news that Inmar had from last night, where we're showing a little over 9% inflation in consumer goods today. So this is a huge issue for many people today, consumers and businesses alike. As a consumer, when we go to the grocery store or the gas pump or, out to dinner, we're always thinking about that. And then as businesses, we're thinking of how could you maintain customer loyalty when your prices are going up, or maintain your market share. So CPGs need to find a way to increase revenue without increasing prices. So this is causing CPGs to explore new innovative ways to reduce costs. So one way to do this would be the automation of some of these back office processes. So this will help protect margins and keep your cost, at a minimum. The next thing is the rise in remote work driving back office digitization. So, as we're all now, sitting in our home office or our bedroom or our dining room table or maybe our back patio, we don't have the nice setups that we had, once in an office with multiple monitors and our printers right around the corner, or heaven forbid an old fax machine. So finding ways to automate and digitize processes or your daily workflow is kind of critical to your efficiency. And the third thing that we want to point out is the fast B2B payments, wanting faster payments. So the rise in digital payments, AR solutions based on a survey ranked second for most in need of updating, with 41% of executives planning to prioritize AR automation. So, as we think about this, we want to think about how can we automate many of our AR processes, including this deductions management piece. So now we can step back for a minute. I know many of you are just starting up, and you're probably seeing some payments come through that maybe you're short paid on, or you have deductions. So we want to take a minute just to talk about what a deduction is. So a deduction occurs when a retailer or distributor does not pay the full amount of an invoice. They're identified by claim codes on the remittance provided with a payment. So essentially you bill your customer $100, they pay you $80 and deduct $20. So it's just a short pay on an invoice. But this comes in many different forms of deduction. Some are pre-authorized, some are unauthorized, and some we can also classify as preventable. So Dash, I'm going to send it over to you so you can tell us a little bit about each of these types.
Right. And so this, these couple of slides to introduce people who are perhaps new or newer to deductions in terms of what they are. If you are a veteran and you are more interested in the AI portion and the automation portions, we will get there as soon as possible. This is just to bring everyone along with us. And what you're seeing on the page is, I think, an interesting way that many seasoned AR professionals also do not kind of categorize the deductions into. So deductions come in various forms. There are different types of deductions, but basically what we are, when we look at deductions, what we say is that, some of them are already, built into the contracts. These are, so what we call as pre-authorized is already built into the contracts. You are expecting them because your company has signed up with a retailer or the customer on very specific things, on discounts, that prepayment discounts that you're going to give, advertising, any allowances, rebates, so on and so forth. The whole, trade promotions, temporary price reductions, and so on. If you have agreements, then that's one way to look at deductions. Why this is important is that the way you process something that is pre-authorized is going to be different from the other two categories, right? Pre-authorized, you're expecting it. The middle category is where it is unauthorized. So, if you are a business leader, then, these are categories of expenses that you never planned for. You never plan for returns. I mean, of course you can plan and give an allowance, but a business is not making a product thinking that there will be returns or that shortages will be delivered. These are unplanned expenses, and hence there is a need for greater scrutiny. Now, what we see in the industry and what perhaps would resonate with your experience is that in terms of number of deductions, not value, in terms of number of deductions, these unauthorized segments are a lot higher, right? You get a lot of returns related individual line items that you have to probe into it. You also get a lot of spoilage, shortages, so on and so forth. So there's a whole host of deductions that are large in volume, small in value, and that you have to validate. And that's the second category. And the third category is what we see is all around compliance, right? There's a lot of things around compliance that you can do to prevent in the first place. And that's why we call them preventable as a category. They would be like, for example, early delivery, late delivery, whether the labeling is in the right place, freight related, compliance deductions. These are things that internally you can work with your different stakeholders, the operations team, the sales team, to make sure that, you're getting on top of these deductions. Why we categorize it this way is, if you look at all deductions as same, then you'd not know how to apply automation to these. But if you take a nuanced view of saying, look, not all automations, all deductions are alike. We are going to take a nuanced view into deductions and apply automations in a differentiated manner. That's when you start getting into faster outputs and faster outcomes. Jamie, over to you.
Okay, thanks for that, Dash. So kind of here, why does this matter to you? So deductions are the second largest expense for CPGs after COGS. So, being a startup or an emerging brand means that you're facing new and exciting challenges, but your focus is on growing your business. Challenges that you need to be prepared for to ensure growth in your product in the marketplace, but also challenges that may eat away at your profits. So that's why we want to take a minute and talk through these challenges, because you need to be prepared to address these. So the first challenge is it's very effort intensive. So when you receive a deduction on an invoice, the data can come from 30 to 100 retailers on multiple portals or via multiple emails. And so not only is it one document, there's a backup document for each deduction. We've actually learned that it takes an average of 3 to 5 minutes to process each deduction. And with automation, that time can be cut by 50 to 80%. So that's a huge time savings there. Risk to margin. So retailer deductions equate to 15 to 25 to 20% of brand revenue. So if you're not tracking these deductions and validating these, there's a big risk to your margin being cut by that much. But you want to make sure these are validated and disputed, as needed. And the last challenge we see is the lack of focus. So 25% of survey respondents say that coordinating deduction response is a challenge. To elaborate on this a little bit, you have your AR team or someone that may pull this deduction back up. If you have a broker out, working with your retailers or distributors for offers, you'll have to collaborate with them. And many of what we found with many clients that we're talking to, this is managed via a spreadsheet today that's passed around. So then, the nightmare of having your sales team have to pull up a spreadsheet and go through line by line to validate things, it's just not where we want them spending their time. So how can we overcome these using some automation? We're going to dive into each one of these areas a little bit in a minute with Dash, but just to kind of give you a quick overview. So we want to improve the admin work efficiency using intelligent document and machine learning. So this is where a lot of the AI will come in, taking off that administrative burden from the front end. Protect margin erosion, just like we mentioned on the slide before, so we can detect patterns and anomalies to improve deduction recoverability. And then last, prioritize high value activities. So focus on vital few through AI-based forecasting methods. So Dash, you want to take us into each one of these a little bit further?
Yes, but before I do that, I just want to make sure that I attribute when I talked about different types of deduction, that classification of deduction has been championed by Jessica Butler of 𝐻𝐻𝐿 Consulting. When I was walking you through the slide, I did not do the right attribution. So please, Jessica Butler puts out a survey of 𝐻𝐻𝐿 Consulting, puts out a survey, which comes out every 2 to 3 years on state of deduction. So you can look them up on internet, but that particular slide needs to be attributed to 𝐻𝐻𝐿 Consulting. So now moving on to, where exactly is automation changing the game for not only finance and AR analysts, for all of your organization. Is the first area is around the admin work efficiency. And when we say admin work efficiency, when we talk to sales leaders and sales operations leaders with our customers, they say that 10% of the sales operations time is dedicated to resolving questions around deductions. Same with sales leaders, maybe around 5 to 10%. Now imagine how much of a drag can this be on a salesperson time when they should be focusing on generating revenue? And so when I talk admin, I'm not talking just finance, I'm talking sales too, I'm talking operations too, in terms of the amount of information that they would have to gather to process a deduction. And so how is AI and machine learning changing the game when it comes to these? So if you look at this page, whenever a incoming remittance, where you receive a claim or a remittance, there are 2 ways in which we are seeing the automation come to play. The first one is that, every deduction needs to be coded. You need to know what it is, right? And using AI and machine learning, the coding of deductions is getting largely automated. So what does that mean? That means that the machine over a period of time, as you scan in more and more documents, the system will be able to predict what kind of document it is. Now, there are 2 sets of complexity. So when we do this work, the first thing that we say is, okay, what does INMAR recognize these documents to be? Are they a temporary price reduction? Are they like a manufacturing chargeback, spoilage, shortage? But see, that's just one part of the equation. but every company has their own way of calling and classifying these deductions. So the system has to be able to do two things. One, for every customer, be able to know just by looking at a document or by scanning a document, what is the type of deduction it is. But also it should be able to learn how you are mapping or what you are calling a particular deduction and be able to prompt that. Now, what's the advantage of that? So when we talk, for example, to our customers, they are saying that, look, I spent so much time going through thousands of deductions, line item, just coding it. Wouldn't it be nice that if I come in and I'm actually looking at the deduction and checking and validating it rather than, doing the first thing, which is code? So that saves a lot of time. Now, look, we are talking about large volume of transactions, right? Like, for example, from our experience, like if you are a $20 million CPG, then perhaps you are processing about 1,000 to 2,000 deductions line items per month. And that's a large number. And everything, if most of it gets escalated to sales, that's a large drain on that time. So coding always helps. The other thing that we are saying is that, there are several other information that is absolutely essential. So, many of you who do this for a living would relate to it, that whenever you get a deduction, you want to know if you're going through a distributor, what is the end retailer? Or you would want to know if you're going through a large retailer, which store or which state or which territory is this about? Now, all that information currently, most AR professionals have to manually type it, or they have to keep it in an Excel, and then they have to aggregate that information. But what the system is able to do is that it's able to scan these documents, understand where store is stored, where the end retailer information is stored, and then be able to populate that in the system. So that's one. The second interesting possibility that that automation has brought, and we are excited to bring it to our customers, is the ability to get UPC level information in a way that has never been available before to a large number of companies. What I mean by that is that, let's say your company is running a temporary price reduction. Like the retailer, buried in the backup document is UPC level information in terms of how your product did, in what store, in what time period. And that information is worth its weight in gold for the salespeople, for the product people to understand how our product is behaving vis-a-vis our marketplace. Now, you can get syndicated data for that, but syndicated data is not real data. The real data that the retailer submits to you, the scan information that the retailer submits to you, all that is there, but it is all there in PDF. It is there in a way that is difficult to extract. But now, because of OCR technologies and because of layering OCR with what we are calling as the intelligent documentation, that you are able to read it, and you can read it all kinds of formats. You can read it across multiple retailers. Now you've got UPC data, which then you can analyze, and then you can clearly take advantage of in terms of making choices around what should I promote, in what time period, what products are having highest returns, like are getting a lot of returns, how are my new product launches doing, am I getting the right bump, so on and so forth. So please do share your questions. We'll be eager to answer as we go along. We don't want this to be a one-sided conversation. It's a nice group where you can raise any questions. But that's kind of like a summary of all the scenarios that we are seeing so far as intelligent documentation is concerned. Another thing that Inmar, and Jamie, you have to do a time check because I'm very passionate on the topic. Another interesting scenario is that, think about how much time you spend on reaching out to carriers for proof of delivery, reaching out to your warehouses to get bill of lading. If you are like, and then link it to this, to the relevant documentation to kind of raise disputes, all that, the indexing of the documents, matching the pattern matching, so to speak, between a deduction information, deduction and any of your bill of lading, your packing slips, all that is also incorporated in this, what we call as greater ability to extract and standardize data. You pull in a document, you tag it, and now the system is able to match and give you all that information. And the time saving is just enormous as a result of this.
So Dash, we do have a question actually. I think this would be a good time to ask it. Can you talk a bit about what a swipe discount is? A retailer reached out to say they want to do a display and deep discount for a product of ours to kick off the start of summer. They asked me what type of swipe discount / deduction I could provide so they could do a 2 for $6 sale for 3 days in August. What's the typical swipe discount look like?
I think, it would be difficult for me to kind of provide benchmark information as part of this call. But what we can certainly do is that if you reach out to us, we will bring in the best experts on this field. For last 40 years, we have been advising CPG companies in terms of how to structure these information. It would be perhaps not appropriate for me to share like a benchmarkable information, but we are happy to engage with you and give you the right guidance, but also how to set up these things so that you can have the right analytics to back you up so that you can, no matter what discount you peg it to, ultimately, the proof is in the results and is in the, the bump that you are going to get, and the ability to analyze it down to UPC level is extremely important. So I think we can certainly help you with this, but it would be just difficult for me to generate a benchmark just off the cuff.
I can jump in a little bit as well. And I think part of the root of the question is what a swipe discount deduction is. To be frank with you, Tamara, who asked the question, I haven't heard that term before, but my guess is that they're referring to a scan. And the way that you would set that up, if they're asking you to get to a certain price point, just looking on your own price structure, what it would take for you to support that. And my guess is if they're opening that up to discussion, they're willing to kind of help bridge some of that gap. So being on the side where I'm writing a lot of those with retailers, it's a bit of a dance, but I would look at like what you need to provide to them on a per scan basis to get them for a 2 for $6 over 3 days. And that will likely, if they're purchasing through a distributor, show up on the distributor deductions in the following month when they bill the distributor for it, essentially, or short pay the distributor.
Thanks, Peter. I appreciate that. Cool.
Okay. She said, okay, thanks. Thanks for the question. All right.
Keep the questions coming, guys.
Yeah. Okay, so now we're going to shift over into protecting margin erosion. So Dash, you want to take this away?
Sure. This is where we are starting to get deeper into the use of AI and machine learning in terms of validating deductions. So far, most of it was how do you get information around deductions? Now the question is like very much similar to what Peter set up for us, which is that let's say you have an agreement and that you have gone for a temporary price reduction with one of the retailers or through a retailer, through a distributor to an end retailer. And now deduction has come in. How can AI and machine learning help you validate the information? So here are a few ways to think about it. So what you see on the page is that typically if you are running a pricing promotion, the validation has got 3 categories of information that you need to validate. One is that, what's the performance date and performance period? Did they comply to what was agreed upon? What about the merchandising requirements? Was that complied to or not? And third is that, the quantity, is that, realistic or not, right? So then, traditional automation would do is that when it comes to performance date and performance period, yeah, I mean, you can certainly say that, I wanted to run it in summer, in the month of July, and then, it used to be, it was supposed to be run for 3 days in that particular, picking up that particular example. But what AI is enabling you to do is that, it is able to detect patterns of buying behaviors that what you would want to discourage. So for example, if you are seeing, forward buying, or if you are seeing that there is diversion from one warehouse to another, or from one buyer to another, then you will be able to detect those trends, as anomalies, and be able to raise that, at least the system will be able to detect and raise it as a red flag so that somebody can look at it and say, yes, this is a valid red flag, or it is not a valid red flag. And then once those flags are resolved, then the machine is learning, right? Like there is continuous learning that is happening, saying, oh, you know what, I raised this as a red flag, but it was actually a false positive, right? Like, or you can say that, well, I missed it. And then subsequently somebody has come and marked it saying that, these are the buying behaviors that we want to discourage. So that's one type where AI ML come in. Peter, you wanted to say something?
Yeah. Dash, if you don't mind, actually, I think some people will already be familiar with those terms, but
Yeah.
I think you touched on a good point around forward buying and diversion. Can you maybe talk just for a second about what those tactics are, like what might be happening? Because not everyone may be familiar with that.
Got it. So basically, depending on your agreement, so forward buying would be more around, like, depending on the agreement, the retailer may end up buying a whole lot more during the period of the discount versus what they end up selling. So depending on so that's one pattern of behavior, right? So you are offering a particular promotion, and then so the buying, there is a spike in buying, and then subsequently those things are sold over a period of time. So that's forward buying. Diversion would be that you buy in one place, let's say you are running across multiple regions, then you buy in one place, and then you try to send it to all your different regions, because let's say the West region is kind of buying products, like you're running a particular promotion in the West region, the retailer ends up buying it in that region, but then is shipping it to all other different warehouses under that category. So those are some of the patterns to be detected, and machine learning does quite a good job at it. Peter, did that answer the question? Yeah, thank you for jumping in. I think it's very important that we'll be able to carry the audience through in terms of the terms and all that we're using. The second is that when you are validating a promotion, there is a need to make sure that the merchandising requirements are met. And of course, in the traditional world, you could send somebody to do some sampling validation, saying that did we get the end cap? Did the store promote in the way that was it put in a flyer or not? But as things move digital, that's a lot of requirement in terms of, let's say you want to do an online ad verification, right? Part of your contract is that you're going to promote our goods, but you're going to promote it online, and in this particular manner. It will be a banner, or it will be a side insert, and so on and so forth. So now what is possible is that instead of an analyst going and checking for that information or looking for an electronic flyer, you can have computer vision driven algorithms that can actually go and validate whether in the digital flyer the insert was what it was supposed to be, or in online ad, is it at the banner level, is it at the side side display level? So now it is possible for us to have algorithms and have bots that are able to go and validate this information, so that you don't have to do it. And then when you submit this information back to a retailer, you now have got quite a reliable set of information to say that, look, we validated it, we had the right technology to go and validate it, and it did not meet our requirement. So recoverability, as a result of some of this, the recoverability of deduction starts to increase significantly, because today, if you look at it, because we don't have these technologies, many companies set very high thresholds, right? Say we're not going to look at $200, $250 or below, $500 or below. Many deductions are not touched at all because you just don't have the time or the bandwidth to go after it. But what automation does is that you can actually check them, because these small amounts tend to add up. And then finally, another thing is that, let's say quantity has been submitted, and you can certainly, like you say that a particular store or a particular region sold 200 units of this particular product, right? You can certainly look at IRI or Nielsen and say that, okay, this is more or less matching what they have provided. But now what it does is that, AI gives you the ability to not only compare it with those syndicated data, but you can also look historically what the trend has been. You can also look and compare it with what the shipping has been from your warehouses. Now you're able to bring in multiple sources of data to detect if there is an anomaly. So you are not only relying on traditional sources, but you are bringing in additional sources, and the system is again going to flag it saying, hey, this was supposed to be in this period. We think that 18,000 units were supposed to be sold. The retailer is reporting 22,000. You can take a look at it and say override, right? But the system is always working to watch out for you and to say that, look, I think this number is anomalous because I've checked multiple sources of information. And as an analyst, you are starting from there, right? So now you are not checking all the information that you know that you have no reason to check, right? Like, because if you're looking at 1,000, 2,000, and I was giving more on the smaller end, right? If you are, let's say, $100 million CPG, then you are perhaps doing 2 to 3 times that, 3,000 to 6,000 of deductions on a month. And going through all of that, validating at that level, nobody has the time to do it. But whereas if the system is doing it on your behalf, you are able to then focus on the vital few that truly matters. So that's the update in terms of, like, you know, how AI is helping protect margin erosion. If you have any questions, happy to take it too. All right. And then the last example that we have is to talk about how AI is changing where you are going to focus, right? Like, part of this large volume transaction environment is that, how am I going to focus on the right retailer or the right type of deductions so that I can improve my recoverability, right? Like, if you go to, like, one question that we typically ask, and I'll not provide benchmark numbers, but I just want to give you a way to think about it, is that what percentage of your deductions are you disputing, right? And that's one question. And the question, and of all the deductions that you're disputing, how much are you able to recover? Like, when you look at these two numbers and when you compare two suitable benchmarks, you'll be able to realize that many companies, because they don't have the right automation, are not disputing with the right deductions. And then even if they're disputing, because the quality of evidence that they provide to the retailer, the recoverability of those disputes is pretty low. So what AI is trying to do is to kind of guide you to the right deductions and to the right retailers that you need to focus on. So for example, if you look at this example, what you're seeing is that, let's say I'm a CPG with 3 retailers, maybe 2 distributors and 1 major retailer. And I'm looking at my last, let's say, 6 months of performance. And I'm looking, saying, okay, this was my promotional budget. Where is my variance to budget? Now you're looking at saying that, okay, if you do a traditional analysis, you say that, well, you know, anything that is above 20% of variance, I'm going to focus on those. So if you look at the green side of the analysis, you will obviously focus on retailer 1 and retailer 2 on trade, because, you know, they are above your threshold of 20%. You say, you know, I'm going to look if the budget variance is greater than 20%. But on the blue, when you do actually a AI-based analysis, what it does is that it's able to layer over a lot of additional information so that it actually points you to where exactly the opportunity is. So in case of retailer 1, if you look at the trade number, an AI-based analysis will not flag it, will not do a red flag on it. Why? Because maybe for that retailer, you have front-ended, like whatever is your budget, you have front-ended your budget. And so, you know, it is only expected that you are going to have a variation in the first 6 months, but thereafter, you know, it kind of tapers down and you're able to make it up. So maybe that's not what you want to focus on. But for retailer 1, if you look at non-trade, although it is 15%, you are seeing that to be exceptionally high, that, you know, there is no seasonality, there is no known seasonality for this. And maybe this is because of extraneous factor like supply chain disruption, or maybe because the rules and policies have been changed by retailer and suddenly you're starting to get a lot of compliance saying, hey, you delivered your goods 2 days early, or, you know, 4 hours late. Suddenly you are seeing a spike in that. And then using AI and machine learning, you're able to detect those kind of trends and say, hey, you need to watch this, because 25% is not bad for where we are at this point in time of the year. But the 15%, should really concern you. I mean, of course, I'm giving you an example just to how to, that the numbers can themselves, absolute numbers can themselves misguide. But if you really want to separate noise, signal from noise, where you really need to focus from, you know, from whatever are like, because there are seasonality or because the nature of the agreement or whatever, then AI is going to be a better reliable mechanism for it. And then, you know, you can take that analysis forward. And this is again, just to give you an example of how this works, is that, you know, you can take that example forward and say, okay, if I want to focus on non-trade, then what exactly am I going to focus on? And here again, you can do a AI-based analysis to understand that, okay, you know, generally when we say non-trade, we mean shortages, let's say we mean spoilages, and let's say we mean damages. Let's say these are the three categories we're focusing on. Now, what the system is able to tell you is that, look, if you look at shortages, it is difficult to recover. And in any case, the variance to budget is low. So this is the one category that you don't want to focus on because, you know, and this is just a hypothetical example, that reclaiming for this particular retailer on shortages is quite hard. They've got pretty hard policies. It's difficult to recover. I don't want to focus on shortages for retailer one, right? Because the variance is low and the recoverability is low. Whereas for spoilages, if I look at my historical information that I have been able to, whenever I have raised disputes for spoilage, then I've been able to recover it. And also spoilage as a deduction type has significant impact on my variance to budget. And so clearly, you know, it's green on both front, and that's for the one that I would want to focus on. Likewise, you can do, you know, analysis for each of your deduction type, understand what is recoverable, what is not, understand what's the impact on the overall variance, so that as an analyst and as someone who drives, you know, when we think of AR analysts, we think that, you know, they are into revenue management work, right? And so when you are seeing these kind of patterns, not only are you, you know, responsible to go and dispute it with the retailer, but also to raise it to your sales leader, inform them as to what is happening on the account, make sure that they understand these trends, and that when they are talking to their customers, they are able to bring this up as a holistic cost of doing business. So in a way, you know, all these analysis are not just to say that, okay, how can I post my transaction at the end of the month accurately? How do I, you know, account for my expenses? But really the question is that how do we collectively bring in the intelligence to the right people so that they can act on it, they can drive the necessary ROI that you are expecting from the relationship with this particular customer. So that's where we believe that, you know, as the role transitions from being primarily focused from pure transactional to becoming a business partner, so to speak, then, you know, these kind of analysis is going to help you make the transition and help you more successful in your roles.
All right. Well, thank you for that, Dash. So I know that was tons of information and a lot of stuff that maybe you haven't even thought about to this point, but this is kind of what we'll say keeps Dash up at night, literally in some cases. But it is something, you know, as you think of growing your business and being more efficient in your processes and you know, how to protect your own margin, you know, it's something that you really, I would advise that you kind of look into, you know, sooner rather than later. It'll allow for quicker growth and just better management of it moving forward. So just kind of in summary, a few best practices here. The automation of automate data extraction for deduction. So this is probably one of the biggest ones. This is a huge time saver, you know, as mentioned earlier, 50 to 80% of time savings with this automation of just pulling all that in and matching it up. Utilize a system that allows for quick validation and easy tracking. So again, to validate, you know, as Dash was mentioning earlier, those trade promotions or any of the deductions that you have come through in a system that will allow you to track it, to validate and track those results. Prioritize deductions based on recovery probability. So you want to focus on those that you think you can have success disputing. Track dispute activity and deadlines, and then use data to determine operational improvements. So that comes oftentimes on the non-trade deductions. So, what can we do? Do we have the wrong color of label on the pallet or the box that we're sending? We hear many things from our clients about how particular these non-compliance deductions can be. So if you're tracking that in a tool, it'll help you be able to see ways that you can improve those items. I see a quick question. Is there some sort of dashboard where the information lives? Can you share what the platform looks like? What are the rough costs for this software? Dash, I'll let you have that one.
Yeah. So, we focus this conversation more in terms of like the capabilities, but to answer your question, yes, we have a product called Deductions link. This is where you have the dashboard, all the information are put together. Several of these automations that we talked about have been inbuilt into the tool. And, while the cost kind of depends on the size of transactions, the volume and all, and so hence we'll be happy to, respond on a one-on-one basis. Our goal in bringing this software and in partnering with the forums like this so that we can reach out to smaller and mid-sized segment is to make it affordable. Larger companies have very expensive suite of tools that give them the capability, but our goal has been to say that how can we cost efficiently serve the mid-market segment, and so we can, what we can assure you is that we are the most cost effective in this segment, and all the information and all the AI that we talked about, our goal is that how can we make it reach CPGs at all scales.
Okay. So this is just kind of a quick recap of the benefit, of following these best practice. Increase profit margins by 5 to 15%, increase your recovery rates to 85 to 95%, reduce preventable deductions by 10 to 20. Again, the 50 to 80% of time saved, and then 100% of deduction data and dispute backup in one system. So, as Dash touched on, all the deduction stuff would be pulled in, and any backup needed there in the tool for your deductions process, your dispute process. So kind of back to our question earlier, we, Dash and I and the team have really worked hard to make this an offering that would appeal to all size companies. And we feel we have a solution that works for, the smallest of the small to the largest of the large. And we've created what we affectionately call build your own adventure. So, we would love to spend some time and talk with you and see how we could help you. So here's a quick QR code that you can scan. It'll take you just enter your email and we'll reach out to you. Or there's our website here also.
Thanks, Jamie. While folks take a look at that, I have one or two questions on my end. So just kind of as a recap, if I'm thinking about this correctly, there's a lot of potential like waste and or money on the table if I'm not actively monitoring my deductions, right? So I think, was it 10 to 20% potentially preventable?
Yes.
So what's the, if I'm a brand and I'm, receiving deductions for the first time, maybe I'm working with a distributor and just starting to kind of see these come through, and what is, if I see something that doesn't look right, whether it's something that I'm monitoring just by looking at the deductions report or through a software like this, what's the best practice on how to contest that with a distributor or retailer?
Yeah. So most distributor and retailers have well set methods in terms of how they will take a claim. So, so like, for example, they may have a portal and they say that you have to come to the portal and dispute, or they might have a particular format, you have to fill it out and send it as an email and that. But what, like from our experience, what we have seen is that the way you word your claims, the backup documents that you attach, is key to recoverability. It's not that, that customers are waiting to kind of somehow, trick their vendors out of money. I mean, whatever is happening, these people are running large algorithms. The systems are running it down. If there are some errors in their internal systems, there's nobody to detect it. And perhaps you are receiving it at the end. So if the claim, like if the dispute is specific, if the attached documents are there, then you will certainly improve your recoverability. That's one. The other thing that we want to say is that, like, you are competing against companies, larger companies that have huge bots or army of people out of, like, low cost locations that are just going and disputing everything. So you have to see that, like, if you put yourself in the shoes of a customer, they're getting a bunch of like disputes which have very poor quality information. So they just go reject, reject, reject. So if you really want to stand out, you really have to work on that and make sure that, you're capturing it succinctly and giving them the evidence. That's what I would say, that if you're starting off, that's the best way to go about it.
Helpful. For early stage companies, who typically would you say is the best person to kind of own the, call it, deductions clearing process? Because I think about a lot of the brands that are on this call, and they might be sole founder operators. They might have them and an ops person, maybe them and a salesperson. Obviously, in most cases, the salesperson is probably the closest to the individual activity that they should expect to see returned on that. But what would you say is like a good practice for owning? Who should own that internally and own the communication? Ideally, a broker's involved. Ideally, like, there's other factors, but oftentimes it falls on one or two people internally to get it done.
Right. So there are 2-3 ways I've seen like owners work Friday afternoon. So this is my time to kind of do the deductions, so that's one model. Sometimes the sales leader, and we really believe that that's a bit inefficient, right? Like, in terms of, like, it's half a day of owner's time, which could be better spent on other things. The other model is that, to go for some kind of like the staff accountant who comes and, posts the checks, kind of make them responsible for doing a little more, so to speak. We also, right, like, not like, it's a bit of a shameless plug, but really, we have really thought about early stage companies. And, like, between Jamie and I, we have discussed this for hours, saying, like, how can we really be partner when we know that, look, it's difficult to afford a service that is like, any service which can be potentially expensive. And so we really believe in that build your own adventure. We would want everybody to give us a chance so that we can explain to them. But in our heart, really, what we believe is that these companies are one day going to become hundreds of millions of dollars or billions of dollars companies. And if we get them on our platform now, not only will help them save money now, but they also live with us for the whole journey, right? So we actually carry it in our heart. We'll just have to see how we can make it effective. But it does pain us that the CEO says, you know what, Friday afternoon, I have to deal with this deduction. I have to go through all these documents and I don't understand what this means, and I have to scroll through so many PDF documents. We say, we've got solutions. We can potentially help you. So
yeah, absolutely. Well, I think I can speak comfortably for a lot of folks on this call and saying that we don't have 10 to 20% of extra margin laying around to go to waste. So no, I appreciate it. It's great.
Yeah, and someone's brought it to our attention that we don't have the right link, the right URL. I can send it in the chat.
Yeah, let's send it in the chat, and then I will also make sure that we send the correct link to all registrants.
Okay.
In the follow-up note. We'll probably send a note out to everyone, by the way, tomorrow once we have the recording up and posted. And we'll make sure that everyone has the right link and the right way to get involved after that.
All right.
Awesome. Does not look like there are any other questions. But if anything comes in after the fact, I'll let you guys know. I'm sure that folks can also reach out to Jamie and Dash as well, and through the QR code to get in touch with that team.
Absolutely.
All right. Thank you, guys.
All right. Thank you so much for your time, everyone.
Thanks for your time. We really appreciate it.
Of course. All right, bye.
Bye-bye.